Welcome to the Third and Central podcast, the only podcast dedicated solely to the University of Louisville baseball program. This is Matt Sefcovic, and as always, I'm joined by Terry Pennington from Inside Louisville Baseball, and we've got a special guest on with us tonight who has been a clutch gene for the Cards this year. If you've been playing or catching along with all the games this season, Louisville's had 4 walk-off wins. And 2 of them have been from none other than Jake Munroe, who's joined us tonight to spend a little bit of time and talk about his season, kind of his career, how he ended up at Louisville. Jake, I know you're busy this time of year. Got a big game in Bloomington tomorrow against Indiana. So we just want to thank you. Appreciate you taking some time and hopping on with us this evening.
Absolutely. You guys do a lot for Louisville baseball. So, of course.
Jake, I want to just kind of start off and maybe throw it back a few years to high school. I was kind of looking up some different things throughout the last few days and just kind of noticed how I think PBR had you ranked as the number 93 kid in the state of Illinois at the time. I can see you smiling a little bit, just thinking, I'm sure they'd like a re-rank, to be honest. But if you can just like take us back to that time a little bit and just kind of what the recruitment process was like for you as high school was kind of coming to an end and kind of how you ended up, I see you got the John Logan, the Volunteers on right there. So just kind of how you ended up there to kind of start your college baseball journey.
Yeah. I always felt like I was overlooked in high school. As you said, I think 93rd, something like that. I always had that chip on my shoulder, but I understood, kind of why that happened. And I was playing local travel ball and I wasn't necessarily getting exposed. And I was a guy who went to the PBR and my numbers wouldn't jump out at you. So I understood it in that sense, but I felt like, if you looked at my production, I always produced, whether it's high school, travel ball, so on. So then, going into my junior year, which is a big year for recruiting wise, I went up to Chicago and played with a team called Lake City that has multiple guys now. One dude is playing pro ball, first rounder. Another guy is at Notre Dame, the shortstop, Esteban. Played with them. And, that summer going into my senior year, that was a big summer for me. I played that summer. It was kind of slow at first, but at the end of the summer, I started racking up some Juco offers from John A., Iowa Western, and a few other places. And I kind of knew going into that summer I was going to be a Juco guy. And with Cam Robinson going to John A. and then Louisville after, I felt like John A. would be my spot, and that's how I ended up there.
One thing that Terry and I talk about quite a bit, not really on the show, but just kind of when we're talking baseball, is I don't think a lot of people quite understand how high level Juco baseball can be, right? I mean, you look at some of the powerhouses across the country, and John A. Logan is definitely in that discussion, and just very high quality baseball is played at that level. How did that type of baseball prepare you for playing at a major D1 school like Louisville?
Yeah, I think it allowed me to get the reps in as a freshman. A lot of freshmen come here and sadly they just can't play, but that's part of it. You guys, especially with COVID, guys who are 5-6 years older than you, playing in front of you, just had to wait your time. But there's nothing like game experience. And I think going to John A., being able to be a starter my freshman year and my sophomore year, it put me ahead of the game compared to some of these other guys who, for lack of better words, sat the bench. And I think that's helped me a lot.
Wow, you mentioned Cam and obviously being a Champaign guy, and I know you obviously know Delroy very well as well. And I mean, throughout the last year or so, I mean, Delroy, he was always telling me, man, just watch. He was always, providing the updates last season. Another homer, and getting excited. And as your numbers continued to rise while you were there at John A., you obviously got to have that experience with the national team last summer. Can you kind of walk us through what that was like and being able to travel and play with, some of the best Juco guys that, in the country?
Oh, it was phenomenal. Me and Eli, we both got to do it together. It was kind of a cool process. It was no tryout. It was just based off your Juco year. Early on, we got heads up that like, hey, like, early on, we knew I was on the watch list. And so, it was always in the back of my mind as I was playing. I was like, all right, I'm not going to try to do something I can't do, but I'm going to continue to give my all and play a good season. And then if it happens, it happens. And luckily for me, it happened. And then, we went out to our training camp in Charlotte. We played there, and I looked around. I was like, man, like, this is dope. Everybody on this team, has an elite skill set. And, the first time in my life that's actually been like that, where like all 9 guys, could be the guy batting third. But then, as we started to play, I felt like I started to see like where they were at and then where I was at. And I think it opened my eyes a little bit to like, hey, like, you're a little better than you think you are. The way I was playing, and, the success we were having. And, it built me up with a lot of confidence, having that experience. And then not only that, but showing up for Juco and going there, placing second, in a tournament that, Division I guys a few years prior placed third in. So it's kind of cool having that, and representing Juco.
Follow up on that, just to kind of continue to walk through that process of yours as you were being recruited from Juco. Obviously, like you said, you had a very successful team you were on, and your numbers obviously spoke for themselves and the accolades that you racked up while you were there at John A. Logan. What was it about Louisville that drew you to the city and the school and made you kind of pull the trigger?
Yeah,
and commit to
I loved my visit, and I was a guy that committed on the spot, actually. And, I didn't think I was going to commit on the spot. I went throughout my visit. They showed me everything. I liked what I saw. I had a feeling, like this may be the place, but let me just see. And then when I sat down in Coach Mack's office and he played me a video, kind of like a montage of this program and its history, and then, of playing in Omaha and all that. And man, like, it just lit a fire in me. I want to play for a team that's competitive, a team that can compete, obviously win a national championship. That's the goal. And him showing that video, and, lit a fire in me to help this team, reach their goals, because their goals coincide with mine. And I felt like, this program has been disrespected the past couple of years and overlooked, and that's right up my alley. I felt like this program was calling me, and, after that video, I knew that, I want to help this team. I can help this team. I never knew it would be this good. The guys would be this great, and this team would have this amount of success.
It's funny you mentioned that video, because I asked this question to a lot of, players that are on the team and recruits and things. And it's one of the first things that always pops up. And I've never personally seen it myself. I'd love to see it, just because you're not the first person and you probably won't be the last that bring it up. So it obviously has a big impact on, some of the prospects that
it would make you want to throw on a jersey
staff are looking at
and go out there and play for sure.
you wouldn't want me out there, I promise.
As you were kind of going through that process, who were some of the other, programs that were kind of after you and trying to, did you take any other visits or anything like that? Or was Louisville kind of the one you had honed in on or the one who had honed in on you the most?
Yeah. They honed in on me the most, definitely from the jump. And I actually committed very early in the Juco process. So usually, like, as a Juco player, like, that sophomore fall for you is huge in your recruiting process. And my coach was kind of telling me, like, hey, like, you're going to have schools reaching out before then, but just don't try to be something you're not this fall. Coach Super at Johnny was the best, and he gave me some great advice. It turned out to be true. Illinois reached out, and then shortly after, Louisville reached out, and they were quick to set up the visit. Which worked out for them, because, I loved what I saw on the visit. So I was talking to some other schools, some mid-majors. I had a call, coach texted me, he said, hey, like, expect a call from North Carolina. The call never came. So it was in the back of my mind a little bit when we played against them. Like, damn, like, you guys should have called me. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on this or not. But yeah, so, they jumped on me from the get-go, and, before my recruiting process could really take off, but it's a place for me. So it didn't matter. I didn't need to see 7 other campuses to know that this one was the one.
Just to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about just the current landscape of college athletics. It's obviously drastically changed over the past couple of years, and I would say kind of going through these processes and just trying to navigate the waters has probably been challenging, as it has been for coaches. Obviously, it's probably been a little different and new for players as well. So let's just kind of talk about, NIL and transfer portal and break that down into two parts. A lot of people talk about NIL and they say it's killing college athletics and all this and all that, which I firmly do not believe at all. Cause you see the stories of, guys that are in college that are able to, help their siblings with tuition that maybe don't have the athletic ability to earn NIL money, or, you see some of the extreme cases where guys are making a ton of money and they're able to help pay off their parents' houses. And you see, there's obviously a lot of success stories that have come from NIL. From a player standpoint, though, like what does that look like for you, and maybe how has that changed your outlook on college athletics, and what has that experience been like? From a player viewpoint?
I don't have any NIL. I'm on a nice scholarship to where my school is paid for, housing's paid for, but I don't have any NIL on top of that. So personally, I haven't been affected by it, but I know there's guys on this team that have used money to help out family. To put themselves in a better situation. And I think, college sports, athletes have been used for the name and image and likeliness, obviously, for a long time without getting compensated. And there's a lot of stories where, they're trying to make it pro to make it better for the families. But it's nice to take off that extra layer of pressure. Like, you don't have to, stress about going pro this year because you can help out your family this year in college. So I think it's been huge. For athletes in all sports, because you have so many different stories, so many different backgrounds. So it's been great. It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely love hearing that. Love hearing those stories, and the fact that, like you said, you don't have an NIL deal, but you're still here playing at the University of Louisville, and grateful for the opportunity that you've got. And I just love hearing, Coach Mack, and he's not the only one. Coaches all over the country in all sports talk about, just having program guys and guys that love being there. So it's really good and refreshing to hear from a player standpoint on something like that.
As we maybe we kind of shift gears into what this year has been like for you, can you maybe just run us through what it was like when you first got on campus, to where just not even necessarily only from a baseball standpoint, but just new group of guys. Again, we've obviously talked about already tonight, just, the level of baseball, that you were used to playing was obviously already a high level of baseball, but you get to this level, maybe there are some dudes that are a little bit better than what you've seen before, or maybe a little more velo, maybe some guys who can spin it a little better, but, from a baseball standpoint, and then even just from a human standpoint, what that kind of
it was definitely an adjustment, outside of baseball. I think, Johnny Logan's very small. I don't know if you guys have, familiar with Southern Illinois, but it was a small town. And I loved it there. It was strictly baseball, and hanging out with the guys. So when I got here, obviously the campus, it's a city, much bigger. So it was a little adjustment there, like walking around, there's a lot of people on campus, a lot of faces, a lot of new faces. And then, baseball wise, I would say the returners were just as probably nervous as us new guys. The roster flipped over a decent amount, and you're kind of unsure what that team dynamic is going to be like. So I feel like everyone was kind of nervous to see how these guys would fit in, what type of guys the coaches brought in to make this team. And, I think, it was really quick when we found out this is going to work. The team started gelling instantly. Guys were making connections right away from the jump, and we kind of saw how special this team was going to be. And then baseball wise, I remember walking. I think Wyatt was throwing a pin, and I remember walking past as he was throwing his pin to the hack shack, and I saw him throw a curveball, and my head snapped because I'd never seen a breaking ball snap like that, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be fun. The pitching's legit. I was hitting with I want to say Lippy, and he was just hitting the cover off the baseball. And you just start to smile as you start to see this team come together and see the talent that we have. It's something that I dreamed of, just playing with the best, against the best.
It's pretty cool that you can identify those kind of aha moments when you're okay, this is big boy baseball. So I think it's kind of cool that, you can kind of take yourself back to those moments. That's really neat. And one thing you touched on also was just there's a lot of new faces on this roster, not just freshmen, but, there were transfers also. and just making sure that everybody kind of gelled and meshed together. As an upperclassman, you probably have a unique perspective because you're a new face also, but you've been around college baseball for, a couple more years than the freshmen that are brand new on campus. Are there any of the younger guys that you have kind of taken under your wing or kind of mentoring to help develop them and get them used to just college athletics
I wouldn't
in
like
general?
necessarily put, like I have one guy under my wing. It's funny because again, like I just feel like we all communicate with each other. It's like I feel like there's not a person a day that I don't talk to, and it's pretty cool. But like always, whenever like you see a freshman going through something, I try to help them as much as possible. Because you look at our pitching staff, like we have a lot of freshmen throwing key innings, and they need as much help as
Mm-hmm.
possible. They need as much guidance as possible because they're definitely making a moment bigger than what it is. Sometimes out there on the mound, it's still a game that they've dominated before, and that they just need to snap back to reality. I love saying something like Everly when he's pitching. I feel like I'm yelling something to him at third base, and like he looks at me, and like I'm trying to give him some confidence, and he looks at me, like nods his head, and he gets back to it. And it's so cool to see like moments like that, especially because he's a Bloomington guy. Like I played against him in high school. To see a freshman dominate like that, and knowing that he still has his best 2 years ahead of him. So I'm really excited about this freshman group. I think they're going to be monsters, in a couple years. So it's exciting to see.
You and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago after a game where I asked you a question about your defense, and you made reference to the fact that you kind of felt like that was kind of maybe something that people maybe knocked you for was the guy can hit, but maybe that's not his strong suit, and so you've taken a lot of pride in your defense, and I mean I gotta tell you, the footwork at third base on some of these balls, like knowing when to charge, knowing when to stay back on a ball. I mean, that bare hand play you made the other night was ridiculous. Some of these things where you can tell you've really put the work in. I mean, can you just kind of take us through what that's like and the work to just constantly getting better and like what it probably feels like to see that
Yeah, I think
improvement, on the
I
field.
felt comfortable this year at third, making a lot of different plays that I didn't feel comfortable last year making. And I think a lot of credit of that goes to this fall when all I could do was just feel. I put the bat down for probably a few months, and I was just out there every day, every BP group, every rep was me on defense. And Mac emphasizing using my glove, trusting my glove, and how I mean that just goes a long way in of itself is just trusting my glove and knowing that I know how to make the play, I know how to get the ball in my glove, and I know where first base is at to make that throw. So it's been really good to see the work this fall pay off, and then it's been also really good for the bat, seeing the bat didn't skip a beat, being off this fall. I can't lie, I do need to step it up. I think I'm leading the team in errors. I'm aware of that. I have some errors that I want to get back, but I think most of all I'm not letting those errors affect me. And I did that a little bit last year in Juco. I feel a little bit wiser this year, able to flush it a little bit quicker. So I think I've made a lot of improvements defensively, but I got a lot more room to improve.
So let's flip the switch a little bit. Talked about defense a little bit. We transitioned to in the box, which this team has kind of been known for late inning heroics. I think 20% of the wins this season, 4 of the 20 wins have been walk-off wins, which has been pretty exciting. Except for my blood pressure,
Yeah.
Terry and I talk about that. But it's from a fan standpoint, it's obviously been super exciting. Starting all the way back in Texas to this weekend, there's just been a lot of excitement around the ninth inning this year for the program as a whole. And like I said, 4 walk-offs. You've been in the batter's box for 2 of those, 2 big-time hits to pick up 2 wins in the last inning. Just walk us through that as a player. Like, how do you prepare for that moment? What's the excitement level? Just what feelings come across you when you deliver
Well,
a big
it's
hit
it's
like
funny
that to win
because
the
I
game?
think as soon as you get to those last 3 innings and it's a close game, the game becomes slightly more fun because everything everything like adds like a little more like element of pressure to it. And you know that like, it's just, you're competing, down to the wire. And as a player, you love to play like that. Obviously, we wish we would just whoop on them from the get go and get the game over with. But especially early on when we're beating teams easily, and all of a sudden it's a close game, you're like, okay, like not now we got a real game on our hands. That's it's a great feeling as a player. So I promise we're not trying to put ourselves in that situation. But when it comes up, we embrace it. And I think, in those moments where I do hit the walk-off hit, I think it's come from a lot of times where I didn't get the walk-off hit. There's a lot of times where that bat has reached me in the last 5 years of my career in baseball, and I didn't get the job done. But, you learn and you grow. And, I'm not going to say like the next time I'm in the box in that situation, I'm going to succeed. I probably fail. But, I know that it's going to make me better, and I'm going to be put in another situation later on to succeed. And that's the beautiful part about this game, is you're going to have a lot of opportunities to do the same thing that you were supposed to do the first time right. You can do it right this next time. And that's what I like about this game.
There's been a lot of talk throughout this season, whether it's from coaches or whether it's from players or, talking just about the closeness of the group that you guys have, and just you can tell the enjoyment that you guys get just playing with each other, being just being teammates. This group just kind of locked in. I've done an interview on the field after every single game the last 3 years, and not one single time until this past week have I seen anybody run out of the dugout and be excited and dump water on a guy, except for until this past weekend. I thought it was an awesome moment. I thought it was, again, just another example of like the closeness of this group, the fun these guys have, and just like, these guys were, they're having fun, but like they're pumped for you. Like, in that moment, like, just how fun is it to just be on this team with these dudes?
So much fun.
This specific year.
I mean, you can even see it from like mid-game antics where we're like, we hate to have Matt Klein out, but when everybody was like clapping for Klein, and you see Mayu, 3 feet out in the dugout, like doing his little clap rhythm thing that he likes to do, or Lucas's walk up where we're singing it even after the song's done playing. We're singing it until the first pitch. It's adds another level of love of this game. You can love playing the game, and then it makes it even more fun when you love playing the game with the people that make the game fun. And I think that's what this team does. And that's going to lead to our success. It's going to be a key part of why this season is going to be great.
I think that's one thing that Terry and I have talked about from time to time on other podcasts is, when you talk to the coaches and players on this year's roster, one thing that you constantly hear is just how much they love each other, how much you all love each other and love being around each other. And I think you can obviously tell just watching you all play baseball. I think that adds an extra level. Like, you want to pick your teammate up. Like you said, if you make an error, like, somebody's going to pick you up. If you don't get that hit, somebody behind you in the batting order, they're going to get that big hit to pick you up. And I think that comes from that level of comfort that you all have with each other. And I think it shows. And I think that's a big thing that teams need to succeed. And you all obviously have that this year. And I think it shows in the confidence and the quality of play that we're seeing on the field. So I think it really is bleeding through on this team.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing the results.
It's funny because we spent so much time this year competing against each other, from the fall to spring scrimmages. We got so being with against each other that when we were like at our last scrimmage, I think we came downstairs to the locker room and somebody said like, all right, like, now it's time to compete together. And as soon as they said that, I had the biggest smile on my face, because that statement, it sounds so fun. You would always like look at the roster during scrimmage and be like, okay, like, I'm playing with him, against him, this, that, and the other. And then finally, like, we're all on one team competing for one common goal. And you just knew it was going to be fun. You knew it was going to be great. We could have told you that early on.
One follow-up question I want to ask you to kind of just turn away from baseball for a second. Terry kind of talked about this earlier. Just as a transfer, you come in, new city, new team, everything is brand new to you. One of the fun things that I like to ask players that come in from outside of Louisville or even outside of Kentucky, what things do you like to do outside of baseball in the city of Louisville? And a follow-up to that, this is always my favorite answers that I get. What are some of your restaurants that you are
It's funny you said
frequent in the city of Louisville?
my favorite things to do
Or
when I
around
was
campus?
I just remember like the first 2 weeks I was here. My favorite thing to do was just go to Banditos, get some Banditos because I live close to there. I was actually getting into golf a little bit. First got here, roommates were into it,
Okay.
and then the shoulder injury, so then kind of backed away from that. But Royals Hot Chicken, it's a great spot. We will hit up El Nepal a lot. Those are some of the staple things. Besides that, I'm really like, I just like to hang out with the guys. There's a lot of nights we just play cards together. And I think, there's no better nights than that. We have a nice little fire pit outside. So we'll light up the fire, play some cards, and just have a good time.
I went to
Yeah.
Topgolf the other night, actually, for the first time. I'd never been. So a big group of us went up. There was, I think, 6 couples for celebrating one of our friends' 40th birthday party. So it was a really good time. We really enjoyed it. I'd never been to Topgolf, not in Louisville, but any of them. And we had an absolute blast. I had never experienced
We
that
went
before.
to we went to
I
tee it
will
up a
definitely
couple
be back
times. It's like a golf simulator. And I'm not good at golf, but we were playing on a par 5, and I hit my first eagle, and I think in that moment I was like, all right, like, play golf. Like, this game's so fun. Yeah,
and then it's all downhill from there.
30 over, but I had that one, so I'm gonna hold on to that.
So I would consider myself a golfer, and I played golf in high school a little bit, and and continue to play. And I will tell you, it doesn't matter. Golf, it doesn't. If you're the worst golfer or the best golfer, there's typically a shot throughout the day that you're like, man, this is the best, right? And like, even just that one's enough to bring you back out for
that same
at least
shot,
another time. Yep, that's exactly right. Can you walk us through what just like a stereotypical day for a Division I college athlete looks like from the time you get up in the morning until it's time to shut it down at night?
It's a lot, actually. I think that my coach warned me that was the biggest difference from Juco to D1 was just like the day. So for us right now, like today is a good example. Wake up at 8:30, go to class. I got class from 9:30 to 12:15. As soon as that is over, we have our first hitting group starting right before 1:00. So you kind of have a 40-minute window to run over taste, grab some food, head over to the field, and get ready to do early hitting. And then you have the second group going at like 1:20ish or so, and then we got practice starting around 2:00 most days. And then on a day like today, it's nothing crazy. Practice probably from 2 to 4:30ish or whatnot, and then you go straight into a lift right after that, just to get the body right. So lift probably takes you from 4:30 to 5:30, and then a lot of guys are in the training room, just trying to get right for our midweek game coming up. We had massages today, so I think after all said and done, I was probably leaving for home probably at like 6:45, 7. And that's kind of what a normal Monday looks like. Not every day stretch that long, but you can kind of see a lot of days, spending a lot of time at the field.
I thought I was busy, and I just work a full-time job, and I hear you going over everything you all do, and I'm like, man, I'm tired again just listening to what you just said. Jake, that's all I've got. Terry, anything else you want to ask Jake before we let him hop off here and begin his file preparations for Indiana tomorrow?
Yeah, I just one other thing that I'm always interested in. I mean, can you talk about I just as I'm at the ballpark all the time, like it's pretty awesome to me to just like how committed your guys' families are, to getting out and seeing you guys play ball. And I mean, your mom made that drive all the way to Virginia Tech. I mean, that's a haul, man. I mean, that's a haul from here, and it's surely a haul from Champaign. So can you just talk a little bit about like how much that means to you? To just like, I mean, maybe you don't look up in the stands and check and see if she's there or something like that, but I mean, she's there at the same time, and just kind of like what that means to you to just be able to see, a familiar face in the stands like that and know, that she's got your back, obviously, I mean,
it means the world to me. And I actually do, like every game I know she's coming to, I try to spot her as soon as I can. just to make sure she got there. But it's also just a nice feeling, even if everyone in the stadium was rooting against me and I was having the worst day ever and I absolutely blew the game for everybody, that one person right there, she will be, and the one person in the stadium who has my back. And it's a good feeling. She's definitely the reason why I'm in this position now. And I have to thank her for everything, so far going on in my life. But that goes for like everyone who comes to my games, family who make the drive. It's just a good feeling because, you're just reminded of the support system you have around you. This game's hard. You're going to fail a lot. So, just being reminded that there's a lot of people out there who support you regardless of how well you play is a great feeling.
Well, I know one thing is I know we don't deserve moms most of the time, and I feel that way. And I know with a wife with a son now, I kind of see it from a different perspective. So, just we love the support that we've got. You got two big supporters in Terry and myself. Terry's there obviously at every game. I come to the ones with my family that I can come to. So we know you all put a lot into this behind the scenes as fans, and most people just see the game, right? That's all we see. We don't see the day that you just lined out, that you get up at 8:30 and get home, sometimes 12 hours later, if not longer sometimes. So we appreciate obviously the work that you all put in behind the scenes, rooting for y'all every step of the way. Obviously having a great season. Hope you have a big game tomorrow night in Bloomington against Indiana, and that continues to follow and carry the momentum in this weekend against Boston College. So just one last time, I just want to say thank you to you for coming on tonight. Like you just talked about your schedule, and we know how busy you are, obviously. So appreciate you taking a little bit of time and spending that with us this evening. And
no, thank you guys for having me.
Cheering
This was
for you
fun.
the rest of the season.
Just talking about things outside of baseball and baseball. Your guys' coverage on Louisville baseball has been awesome. Thank you.